Hooray! Welcome to Dune Book Club again, everybody. Oh, I heard an echo for like half a second. We're good. Hooray! We're going to talk chapters 26 through... I'm still hearing it. Chapter 26 through 30. Very exciting. Very exciting. Huzzah. And did everybody catch up? Has everybody read all the chapters?
I read the chapter 26.
Doing great, right? Doing great.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess let's dive in. We can do the general overview thing and start breaking down each of the chapters.
Yeah.
If that works for you guys. How about you guys in the chat? Who's been reading along with us? Who is caught up to chapter 30, or who's just here to hang? It's all fine. I feel a little bad spoiling things, but it's all good. It's a great story.
You at the assignments as well in the Discord, so
What's
I
that?
mean you at the chat.
Why am I? Oh, it's because we're all here. Are all the doors closed?
Yes.
Okay.
You might be the only one, Danny.
Okay. It's gonna drive me crazy. All right. So, for reals, you guys don't hear that? I don't know what's happening. All right, it's awful to me.
Okay, I'll turn off my that, and then
How about that?
just where this is that better?
Beep bop boop boop. Yeah, 10,000 times better.
Okay.
Because now I can't hear myself anymore. I was hearing myself delayed, and
Gotcha.
then you guys also delayed. I don't know what was going on, but it's fixed. Right. All right. So, chapter 26. This is partially into book 2 within the larger volume. So this is Eakin Nefud informs the Baron Harkonnen that he knows that without a doubt Paul and Jessica are dead, and the Baron agrees, but he just makes life hard for Nefud because power and fear, right? So he just has to continue to make people feel terrible about themselves. He also the same soldier reports that they have Dr. Kynes in their custody. And so Baron says, all right, make it look like an accident because he's an imperial man, like he works for the emperor. So we can't outright kill him because then the emperor will destroy us because all of his soldiers are already here. And they also say they've picked up Thufir Hawat, who still believes that Jessica was the traitor. So the Baron's going to use that to his advantage and try to basically turn or coerce, or as he calls it, woo. He's like, I'm going to woo Hawat and make him my new, because Piter is dead. He wants a new Mentat, which also helps kind of build, like with world building, as explaining how rare and important a Mentat actually is. Because he's like, you can't just throw this person away. Like, I need one, and they're hard to get, which I thought is cool. And he also talks about Beast. So one of his nephews, Raban, comes in. So he's known as the Beast Raban to everybody else. And Raban is going to temporarily, unbeknownst to him, be placed back in power on Arrakis. But it's all sort of this ploy on behalf of the Baron to basically be like, I'm going to give them this big evil son of a bitch, my nephew, the Beast Raban. So he's going to go and squeeze them, right? So he says, we're going to squeeze Arrakis. And he's like, so execute everyone? He's like, no, not execute everyone. Just squeeze them. But the idea is Raban's going to be so terrible that it's going to make his other nephew, Fade, look good. So Fade Rautha is the one that he actually wants to take over Arrakis. And his long-term goal for his house is to see themselves as emperor. And he realizes this won't happen in my lifetime, but I'm setting the stage for this to happen in the future. And yeah, Raban's main job is income. His job is to make the money back for this very expensive coup that the Harkonnens threw on this planet. Because he basically said, if we, I forgot how he phrased it, but it was something like along the lines of like, hey, if we did nothing but sell all of the spice for like 60 years, we would still just barely maybe pay off what we owe.
Yeah.
Hooray. So that's most of chapter 26. Chapter 27. This is Paul and Jessica exiting the sandstorm. So the ornithopter is pretty damaged. He uses the sand to like slow their descent, and then eventually they kind of crash on one wing and hop out. And And so basically, and a sandworm comes by, destroys the ship, wiping away all evidence of their existence. So they can almost walk freely just because everyone thinks they're dead. But at the same time, they very well may be dead soon if they don't find some sort of shelter because they're just wandering the desert. And the worms that he's seen are larger than the guild spaceships, which are mentioned in earlier chapters of how massive those are. So these worms are gargantuan in size. They're just continue to get bigger and bigger. So the difference so Paul is talking about his prescient memory in this chapter as well. So the things he's seen in the future, and he's like, I've seen this place, this ridge, this everything, but it was a different time, and Duncan was with us. So something is wrong. So either he's remembering incorrectly, or this isn't that moment.
Right.
And then they take some energy capsules, they drink some water, and there's an axiom for the best place to conserve your water is in your body. Because she's like, hesitant to waste it, but at the same time, if it's in you, that's the best place for it to be, especially if you're wearing a still suit, because it's all going to be contained anyway, so you might as well be hydrated. Jessica gets caught in a sand slide, and he has to dig her out. She uses some Bene Gesserit training to slow her heartbeat and decrease her need for oxygen. It's called Bindu suspension. So it's a deep meditation that slows down the body's metabolism to near death. And so she was able to keep her cool, but Paul didn't. He panicked, right? And this is a good moment where Jessica comes back and becomes like her, basically the teacher again, being like, hey, we're going to continue with your lessons. He's like, wait, what? He's like, you panicked. You fucked up, kid. All Paul has at that moment is a knife, a pair of compass, and binoculars, because the pack was also lost, and the pack had everything in it, including their tent and everything else that they would need to survive. We have a little chemistry moment where Paul clicks that the spice is alkaline while the Paracompass's power pack is acid-based. And then he mixes them together and creates this foam to build some sand reinforcement so they can start tunneling down to get to the pack. And then Jessica gets a hand on it and basically is just like, all right, you're going to have to get mostly buried. I'll keep your head above sand. And then we pull it up. So they succeed. They get all their stuff back. This is the third mention at this point of maker hooks. The first time is when they're in that and they grab the pack and it's like, oh, it's your standard Frem kit. It has maker hooks. It has all these other things. And they at no point define maker hooks. And that is still true here. They don't define maker hooks, but they mention it again and again. So the foam breaks down as expected, reburies Jessica. They come out. They warmly remember Gurney Halleck almost bringing themselves to tears because he always has the right words for the right moment. Yeah, he must learn control. That was a big thing. And there's an interesting moment where Paul, at the end of the chapter, where Paul looks at his own hand and notices how inadequate it appears as compared to a sandworm. It's just an odd thought, I think, to have. It's like, oh, my hand's not as good as a worm. On to the next chapter. So chapter 28. This is from Gurney Halleck's perspective. So he is currently in the house of the son of Tuik. So this is Staben Tuik or Staben Tuik. I don't actually remember how to say this one. So he's the son of that smuggler that we liked so much, and he has a very similar attitude to his father. So Gurney is hanging out with him, and he's like, hey, all it took was the Atreides saving me from the Harkonnens to get my life debt, and you've just done the same thing, so I owe you my life. Let me get revenge. He's like, whoa, calm down, fighter man. Because all Gurney wants is vengeance against the beast, Raban, because Raban's the one who did this to his jaw and left this huge scar on his face. But Tuik is trying to get him to calm down. Be like, hey, well, first of all, I will avenge my own father, because he offers to do it for him. He's like, no, it will be my knife, not your knife. But yeah, so Gurney is now going to be working with the smugglers. They both have scores to settle with the Harkonnens, and it's up to Gurney whether or not, how he wants to handle his men. Because he initially, his gut instinct is to say, let them choose. This is obviously my path, but it doesn't have to be their path. Just more reinforcement that Gurney is just kind of a good dude. But Tuik is saying, maybe rethink that. We can always use more fighters, if this is what we're after. And then Gurney, one of his men, Matai, is dying, and wishes, like, his final wish is for Gurney to sing him a song. So he sings him this beautiful song on his balisette, plays along with it until he dies. And then they went from 74 men to 73, and that's where that ends. So it's just, that's basically just like an update chapter letting you know that Gurney's alive, where he is, who he's with, and that will continue to expand later. Not much to that chapter. 29. This is Paul and Jessica emerging from their tent. Now that they've got their tent and all their stuff back, they make a tent. They make camp. We finally get to see a thumper in action. It's not really described in this book, at least not yet, which I thought was weird. So I feel like it's so distinctly etched in my brain, like the look of it from the film.
Yeah.
So like I kept expecting to see it, and then I didn't. Yeah, so the thumper is a device that causes these vibrations that will attract a sandworm. So basically, if you're going that way, you want the thumper to be over here, so the worm's going to go over here and ignore you while you kind of hop across the desert. Yes, yeah, Tigran says, another thumper sounds drawing the worm away. The Fremen have called the worm away, but why? Paul mentioned something about maker hooks, but we'll have to wait and see what that's all about. Absolutely. So memory stuff. So I couldn't remember the way it's phrased. It's one of those, like, it was either prescient memory or just like what he's already observed. But this is where he learns to walk without rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just being like, this is how the Fremen walk with absolute certainty, even though he's never really seen them outside of, like, out the window of that ornithopter that one time.
Yeah.
So we assume that this is a prescient memory. And so Jessica follows him, and they find basically this, like, step-step shuffle, step-step slide way across the sand so that they just sound like the desert to not attract the worm. Then they eventually get to into a garden. So they find that, okay, this place is definitely... So they get up on this rock ledge. They run away from the worm. Oh, wait. Sorry. I am ahead of myself, I think. Is the worm in this chapter? Yeah, that's the one where they end up sprinting away from the worm, right? Is it the next one?
I think it's the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, they end up in this garden, and they see some, like, signs of civilization. There's poles and stuff in the ground. Oh yeah, and it says, yeah, we'll camp here tonight and look for the Fremen tomorrow. And then a voice steps in and says, most intruders regret finding Fremen in the desert. And they're like, oh, shit. Hooray. And that's mostly that chapter. No, I think it is that one, because they run, and that's why they land there. They're like, oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, because chapter 30 is Dr. Kynes, with final confirmation that he is indeed Liet Kynes. So the Liet that all of the other Fremen characters have been talking about up until this point. He announces himself at the start of this chapter as he's starting to lose his mind. So the Baron basically ordered Dr. Kynes to be dropped into the desert without a still suit, without any sort of covering, to just wither and die, which can happen very quickly on Arrakis. So he's having these very exposition-heavy visions with his dead father. So, like, his dad is the one who sort of set in motion the plan to terraform Arrakis, and again, like, plans within plans, right? It's just like, not like, we have to make them believe us, so we must wrap our science in the guise of religion so that not only will they believe it, they'll die for it, kind of thing. And that is a super cool chapter for me. That was one of my favorite ones. Mm-hmm. And then Kynes dies. He gets blown up. So he's on top of a bubble, and yeah, when we get back to that one, I'll start reading a bunch of chunks from it, because there's lots of interesting bits in that chapter. And his last thoughts, what I loved, is that he calls himself a desert creature. So he's become one with this planet, especially after coming as an outsider. And it sucks, because initially he thinks the Fremen have come to save him, because the birds who are going to eat him. Yeah, there it is. That's that paragraph, Tiger. Yeah, so as Kynes crawls, he can smell pre-spice beneath him. This puts him in a dilemma. If he crawls beneath the sand into the cool underlayers, he has a better chance of surviving. But if he can smell the pre-spice, that means the gases under the sand have pressurized to an explosive level. So he can either die or be killed. Decisions. Yeah. So now that we're bouncing back to chapter 26, thoughts, questions, concerns?
Okay, tell me again what 26 is.
Chapter 26 is the Baron talking with Nefud.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was his other nephew. I didn't know who that was. Now I know.
Raban is his nephew.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
Nefud is a soldier. Okay.
Just a soldier.
Oh, Nefud is the children. That's maybe after.
Yeah. So yeah, Raban and Feyd-Rautha are both his nephews. Raban is dangerous and terrifying and violent and evil and super bastard. Feyd-Rautha also evil, but he's a little more gentle. He's the one that earlier on, Feyd was the one sitting in on meetings and stuff. And Raban has mostly, up until now, just been talked about.
And also, like, at this point, we didn't know how old Feyd is supposed to be either. Because, like, I didn't know he was supposed to be, like, a teenager.
Yeah, he's a boy. He's a Paul Foyle.
Yeah. And like, in the movie, he's Steam. So, like, that doesn't translate at all.
Yeah, but also Kyle MacLachlan is supposed to be 15, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, true. Yeah, so that was like, oh shit, he's a kid, okay.
More moments where the Baron is such a badass. Have the man killed, the Baron said. My lord, Kynes is the imperial planetologist, His Majesty's own servant. Make it look like an accident, then. Just like, no questions, just kill him.
Yeah.
And his plan to take over Hawat is like so multi-layered because he's like, yeah, I would love to like woo him, seduce him. Like, I'd like to just get him on my side, however necessary. But just in case, poison the shit out of him and then slip the antidote into his food so that if he ever acts out, we just remove the antidote and he dies. Let him scan his own food because like an antidote won't show up, just a poison. So we poison him now with the water, and then it's awesome. So it's like this residual poison. So it's like little by little they're going to poison him with water. That Piter devised, which I also think was kind of cool. Tigran says, the Baron reiterates his orders for his nephew. Squeeze for income and have no mercy, but don't eradicate. They need that sweet, sweet spice income to flow for years to come. Absolutely. That's the whole thing. Oh yeah, so both Kynes and Hawat will have accidents then, Nefud, but only Kynes will have a real accident. It's Hawat I want. Yes. Yes. In his water, you will administer the residual poison developed by the late Piter de Vries, and you will see that the antidote becomes a regular part of Hawat's diet from this point on, unless I say otherwise. And then there's lots of back and forth, which is, I think, just one of those moments where the author doesn't think you understand what he's saying. So he's like, don't you understand? I mean, this is how the poison works. So a lot of that chapter is that.
There's also one of the conversations between Raban and the Baron, where he what was it? Raban accuses the Baron of killing Piter, and the Baron is just like super upset immediately that he would have even thought of wasting someone's usefulness. And so like, his idea of like the usefulness of life is not like caring for it. It's like, oh no, it's a chess piece. Don't throw it away when you still have use for it.
But by the same token, that moment is a chess move. Yeah. Because that is a move against Raban because it's not the truth. Because he was already planning to kill Piter.
True.
Because in that earlier chapter, he was just like, I think he's outlasted his usefulness. So he's there to like basically outmuscle and outthink his nephew. Because he's also like, he keeps his shield on full blast when Raban comes in the room because he knows he's a threat to his person. Yeah. So it's like, he's one of those like power and fear, fear and power, including within his own family tree because he's made a bunch of monsters like himself. So like, I also love that moment for that other reason because it's just like, he's just fucking with them. He just keeps fucking with everybody.
And it works because like he comes in all like confident, and then by the end of it he's like looking down at the ground and he's been taken.
Yeah, like he's submissive but pissed. Like he fucking hates it. Like he hates his uncle and you can tell, but he also respects him because he fears him, and that's like that entire family's relationship. Tigran says, but we're not done yet. The Baron will also systematically pump the Mentat with false information about Jessica's betrayal. True. The plan seems a little convoluted, even by soap opera standards, but guess that's just the Baron's style. It makes sense, because the way that's sort of described in this chapter is a Mentat functions and takes all actions based on information. And if he already believes this information to be true, the Baron just has to reinforce it. Because it's much easier for the Mentat to be correct than incorrect. So he's like, yeah, of course you're right. You're a Mentat. And now you're going to be my Mentat, and we're going to take care of that traitor Jessica. Cheveos asks, having never read the Dune books, is the upcoming movie a retelling of the story in the books, or is it a different tale in the Dune universe? It's a retelling of this book split into 2 films, which normally normal books transferred into 2 movies makes me mad, but this one I'm actually excited because there's a lot of information. So two films will allow this story to actually be told, I think, closer properly. Tigran says, Ravan suggests the Baron's estimate of 5 million might be lowballing it when you add in the Fremen, but the Baron believes the Fremen aren't worth considering. They can ignore them. Super true. That was another moment where it's like they almost have the truth for like 2 seconds when he's like, yeah, the Fremen slaughtered the Sardaukar. He's like, no, those must have been Atreides. Like, absolutely not. There's no way like those hicks out in the desert could do anything. And yeah, so I love the fact that it's like they're aware but not listening. Kind of same thing with like the betrayal. It's like they're aware there was the Atreides were aware that somebody's going to betray them, but they're like, but not Dr. Yue. If anyone but Dr. Yue. Similar sort of missteps, right? That overconfidence has undone or will undo, I think, both houses. Sorry, the vocals just kicked into the song. I'm like, oh, so cute. Yeah, Tigran, it's weird because I've only seen that mentioned in a couple of articles that it's going to be 2 films. Yeah. Tigran says, when Raban leaves, the Baron watches him go, thinking about how he'll replace Fade Rautha with Raban and how the people will cheer for Fade as their savior. Like we said, the Baron's plots can get convoluted, but at least he loves his job. Yeah, it is pretty convoluted, but at the same time, it's like, what better way to paint a hero, right, than to create this villain ahead of time and then have Fade, be their savior from Raban. Like, it's a decent plan, because the Atreides were treated so warmly because they weren't the Harkonnens, right? The people immediately respected them more because they're kind. They're giving out water. They're doing all these things that the Harkonnens would never do. So now the Baron's like, all right, send them Raban, beat the shit out of them, kill a bunch, do what you must. But then we give them the gentle hand of Fade Rautha. There's another. Oh yeah, there's a similar to like, hey, don't kill everybody. It's like, hey, pogroms are wasteful. So it's like, yeah, don't just go slaughtering groups of people. Just make them hurt, kind of thing. Squeeze them for their money. Power and fear, fear and power. There's I didn't obliterate him casually when talking about the murder of Dr. Yue, because he's so proud of the fact that he was able to undo the teachings of the Suk school. Just another fun, proud moment for the Baron. And just the casual shit talking of the Baron is delightful. So Raban's smile was gloating. I understand perfectly, my lord, because they're about to have this joint evil moment. And he's like, you understand nothing perfectly, the Baron growled. And it's fun, because he is kind of an idiot. A big, bad, scary idiot. Yeah, ignore them, boy, the rabble. Talking about the Fremen. So he tends to call groups of people different animals. We've seen that before, because like his workers are bees. I think the Atreides to him were rabbits. And this is the first time he calls himself a carnivore. So he literally sees himself as a predator in this world. So he says, a carnivore never stops. Show no mercy. Never stop. Mercy is a chimera. It can be defeated by the stomach rumbling its hunger, by the throat crying its thirst. You must be always hungry and thirsty. The Baron caressed his bulges beneath his suspensors. Like me.
That's an interesting parallel, too, because, like, the Bene Gesserit want people to be human, and if you're not a human, you're an animal. And
yeah. Yeah, and he's all about indulgences, right?
Yeah.
He has the intelligence, but yeah, he obviously doesn't have the same control as the Bene Gesserit or other highly trained humans. And then more internal barren thoughts at the end of that chapter. Then, when I send in Feyd-Rautha to take the load off them, they'll cheer their rescuer, beloved Feyd-Rautha, benign Feyd-Rautha, the compassionate one who saves them from a beast. Feyd-Rautha, a man to follow and die for. The boy will know by that time how to oppress with impunity. I'm sure he's the one we need. He'll learn. And such a lovely body. Really, a lovely boy. So gross. I just realized the Baron is like Albus Dumbledore if he gave the magical world to hate and fear Voldemort. Mm-hmm. For the greater good. Yep. Raban's only concern is Kynes, but the Baron reminds him that Kynes is stuck on Arrakis. He cannot leave because of his addiction to the spice. Spice addiction? Oh yes, we'll be getting more into this later. Oh yes. Yeah, so basically once your eyes go the solid blue, you can't survive off of Arrakis. At that point, it's like you're past the point of no return. You're so heavily addicted, and the only place to get enough to stay alive is the planet itself. Unless you're stupid rich or work for the guild or something like that. On to the next chapter. So we're at 27. So at the age of... this is the... I must find the right vortex. Oh, that's the fun thing, where he like uses his crazy Kwisatz Haderach whatever powers to navigate this sandstorm safely. Because he can like branch out and see all the possibilities of the storm, and he finds the right spout to like shoot themselves out of. So they manage to like lose their pursuers. And they crash. And now this is the literal, or basically the litany of fear, which we see over and over and over again, which is like the fear is the mind killer thing. Jessica has a moment where she's like, it was like the litany, she thought. We faced it and did not resist. The storm passed through us and around us. It's gone, but we remain. So that storm was fear, and they fucking dove straight through fear and made it out the other side. Good for them. Better set us down in sand. They land the thing. Run. Oh, yes. La, 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 la. Worm. They get chased by a worm. Bigger than a guild spaceship. Talked about that. Ledge is slippery. This one is a lot of like... Huh?
This whole section is probably that part in the trailers for the new movie that we've seen, where we see the worm.
Yes, yeah, that would be the first time you see a worm's mouth. Maw. I like that word. Yeah. And they made it big. They made it big in that trailer. Like, they're all huge, but that's like big. even for, I think, as described. But damn it, if it ain't dramatic. Jessica, again, is treating her son weirdly because she's afraid of him. She's like, I'm afraid of my son. I fear his strangeness. I fear what he may see ahead of us, what he may tell me. This is also the first chapter where we start to see that Paul has specific blind spots in his prescient visions. There are moments in time where it's like, oh, if I don't make it out of this, it's darkness. I don't know what's going to happen now. So they're very specific things that he can see in the future, but not everything. This is the first use of a thumper. And it's just basically just described as a tool that has no physical description yet.
I just assumed it was something like handheld.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to another description because I have been ruined by Lynch's Dune. So when we did the Dune paint night and I painted that stick, that's what a thumper looks like in the film, because it's like a big staff, like a spike that you drive into the ground, and then the thumper is like in that little cage and it goes doom 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 doom. Although I do think a handheld item makes a shit ton more sense because it's in a little pack. So
yeah, I was thinking like a grenade or like a little device that was like thing this big.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's probably what Herbert was thinking as well, because it doesn't seem like a big thing. It seems like you would need a bunch of them, and so there's probably more than one in that pack. Tigeron says, what is your current favorite and least favorite part of the book, and why? That's a good question.
I'm finding it interesting how characters are just kind of dying. Characters that I were like, oh, we're gonna have a lot to do. They're dead. Like, oh, and it's not even like Game of Thrones dramatic dead. It's just dead, and then dead. We're just kind of getting rid of them, and it's like it's taking me in directions that I didn't. I thought we were going this way, and we keep making turns and going somewhere different.
Yeah. Same. Like, I forgot that Gurney ends up with the smugglers. 100%. I forgot what happened to Gurney. So I was like, wow, cool. And I forgot that Kynes also died so soon. I feel like I don't know. I don't know why I thought he lasted longer. Yeah, I think so. Is that a favorite or a least favorite thing?
Like a good thing, like a favorite thing. I'm enjoying that.
I like the way that he manages to. My current favorite thing is where and how he paints world building. His descriptions for certain things make that entire universe so tactile to me, and that's what draws me into a world. Like George R.R. Martin does it really well with like food, sex, and violence, but Herbert does it really well with minor details that make something ring so true. Like there's a part where Jessica like covers her straw, and they mention like the grit of the sand as she like closes this rubber thing, and I could see, hear, feel, and taste all of that. Right? It's like when you're at the beach and you're trying to like close something that's rubber, and like you can't always get all the sand off, and it does that little grating thing. Like that solidified that experience to me. It's like, yeah, I know exactly what that feels like. I know what I'm like. I don't know, little shit like that just peppered in. Beautiful world building, and also like experiential. And I think we've all talked about this before. It's like I'm always thirsty when I'm reading Dune, and because it does such a good job of describing thirst and the need for water and all this other stuff. Like I always feel like I'm experiencing it along with the characters, which a lot of times I feel like I'm on the outside, but because I'm in every single character's head, I think it's easier for me to get attached. What about you, Ryan?
I really only have the talk with Raban and Baron for reference right now in these chapters.
Yeah. What's his favorite part of the book? So overall, what's your favorite thing about the book right now?
Just like as much as we've been told about everything else of like the Atreides and the Barons, we're still fairly in the dark about the Fremen, and so we learn about the world as much as like the main people know about the world. So like whatever is like in the indexes of like the current knowledge of the world is what everyone who's reading the book knows about it, and they discover it as they go. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that's so cool. It's like they give you so much information download at the beginning that you think there will be no more mysteries or surprises, but they continue. Like the threads of like questions continue as you push forward. So all the gimmies are just so that you can understand all the stuff you don't understand, if that makes sense. Okay, what about least favorite thing? What's the stuff that's bothering you about the book?
I don't know if I have anything yet that's bothered me.
Yeah, if there was something I didn't enjoy, I'd probably be like, I don't want to read this anymore. But like, it's compelling.
For me, it is occasionally just ham-handed devices of exposition delivery. Like Kynes' death, I feel like literally only happened to give us terraforming information. And I think that character is so cool that it's a great moment, right? The concept of him having this frustrating conversation with his father right before biting it is a beautiful idea. But the entire conversation is about like the plans for the planet. And I get he's dedicated his life to it, but it doesn't ring true to me as like a final moments sort of thing. That might just be me. And that happens elsewhere as well, where it's just like, you just need this information, so I'm going to wrap it in this little package and give it to you. Most of the time it works. I think for that chapter, I'm always disappointed. It's like, I like Liet Kynes, though. It's cool. And I'm stretching, because same. Like, I love all of this, but that's the one thing I think this last batch where I was like, he deserved better. Tigran says, heck, this just the discussion of Dune is making me thirsty. Time to grab an Arizona iced tea. Ooh, crap. I don't remember if it's this chapter or not. Where is this one? Might be the next one. So he knew as though it just lay at the edge of his awareness that the worms were to be respected and not feared if so he can't get to this super important thought that he knows he needs his brain to get to, whatever that is. And he shakes his head.
I dropped very gently.
Oh yeah, there's still like this weird conversation between him, Paul, and Jessica. It was like, "I knew you'd find me," she whispered. He looked back up at the fissure. "It might have been kinder if I hadn't." Paul! "I lost the pack," he said. "It's buried under 100 tons of sand, at least. Everything? The spare water, the still tent, everything that counts." So that's before they get the pack back and all that stuff. This is very much a... like, that whole chapter is to show how fucking dangerous this desert is just trying to exist in it. Like, Jessica gets buried within, like, 5 minutes of landing. And then they lose the pack that they need to survive. And it's just... everything is shit in the open desert. But there's this cool thing, I don't remember where exactly it's written, but it's one of those like, hey, if the Fremen can do it, we can do it. Like, we can survive this because clearly there is evidence that you can. And so that leads to his, like, okay, this is how we're going to walk. This is how we're going to move. These are the choices that we're going to make.
And this is like a good chapter where you got to see him like act like he's in charge of her, but then back to like mom and son relationship. It was back and forth. Like he was there, he was her son, but at the same time was in charge of her, and he kind of floated back and forth between those two in this chapter.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good scene. Yeah, that's the moment where he's just like, "We should continue your lessons." He suppressed a sudden anger, said, "Mother, don't you think we can do without..." "Today, you panicked," she said. And she's like, blah, blah, blah. "You didn't do what you're supposed to do. You're shit. Come into the tent, and I'm going to train you." A review of the hand. Oh, that's why he was looking at his hand, because she's going to train him to control himself more. So like the nerves. You must learn to control every muscle, every fiber of your body. You need review of the hands. We'll start with finger muscles, palm tendons, and tip sensitivity. Come into the tent now. And then, review of the hand. He looked at his hand. How inadequate it appeared when measured against such creatures as that worm. Whee! And then the next chapter is the conversation between Gurney Halleck and Tuek. Staben Tuek, the son of Esmar. And I always like it with the characters just in this book, and it's kind of across the board, so it's clearly a Frank Herbert thing, but they're always like, no, all these extended reactions. Just cracks me up. So it's like, "Then you're the one I owe thanks for the help received." Gratitude. This wife said, "Sit down." I just think it's cute. And this is Halleck getting pissed that Tuek isn't pissed that his dad is dead. He's like, "But they killed your father, man!" He's like, "Perhaps. And if so, I'll give you my father's answer to those who act without thinking. A stone is heavy, and the sand is weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both." I love that. Love it. And then such like an old fucking Western moment with Gurney. He was like, "I have a score of my own against Raban. I owe him for the lives of my family." He rubbed at the scar along his jaw. "And for this." Such a cartoony moment. I dig it. "You doubt my word?" "No!" "You saved me from the Harkonnens. I gave loyalty to the Duke Leto for no greater reason. I'll stay on Arrakis, with you or with the Fremen." He says, "Whether a thought is spoken or not, it is a real thing and it has power," Tuek said. "You might find the line between life and death among the Fremen to be too sharp and quick." So he decides to stay with Tuek. And I love this line from Tuek, and this is clearly the smuggler's perspective, and probably their perspective from any other outsiders, where "We live on sufferance down here," Gurney Halleck, Tuek said. "Arrakis is our enemy." Like, the planet itself is what they're consistently fighting against. Whereas, like, the Fremen are like, "Just love this planet." And Liet Kynes is like, "If you showed an ounce of compassion for this planet, it would be this paradise. Like, stop fucking with it." So it's like, all the people who are mining it the planet's their enemy because they're harming it, right? So it's like the planet is striking back. But for someone like Kynes, it's just like you just gotta. All it needed was a little love. Moving on. Beautiful song, cute moment. I like the fact that, like, as pissed and frustrated as he is, he stops everything to grab his balisette and sing a tune for his dying comrade. It's just, I love Gurney Halleck. He's just a great character. Next chapter. What are we on now? This is.
Do we get to hear Patrick Stewart sing in the movie?
You do, and it's awful. He is not a singer. This is chapter 29. Very long segment. Weird excerpt at the top of this chapter. Basically, like, she and her mother and sisters and this is the Princess Arulin, watched her dad as basically a sex slave arrives and tries to seduce him. It takes an interesting turn because he's like, wow, you're perfect. You'll make a great gift. So he's not swayed. He's not seduced. And he utilizes this to his powerful advantage. So the whole thing sums up to, you have no idea how much consternation this restraint created in the royal creche. Subtlety and self-control were, after all, the most deadly threats to us all. So it's like, even in that moment, in a supposed private moment, that his wife and daughters were spying on him during, like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Super weird. Anyway, that moment always. There's lots of moments in the universe. I wonder how bad a sunburn would be on Arrakis. Pretty rough, I would imagine. But I think the sand would get you before the sun would have a chance. The sandstorms, like, ripping flesh from bone and stuff. Oh, this is a moment that I like. This is a Paul line, which is a throwback to a Dr. Kynes line. So when they're in the ornithopter, and Dr. Kynes something is like, yes, that is a. He hesitates and then says worm. In this chapter, Paul says, talking about whenever I light its candle, it'll give us about 30 minutes talking about the thumper. So the thumper is also flame based. I don't understand how they work in the book. So they have 30 minutes before it starts. He says before it starts calling ... worm. So he also hesitates before calling it a worm, which means he's at least on the right track that Liet Kynes wanted him to be on.
Yeah. I think I understand what the thumper is supposed to be designed like. Do you know what a Stirling engine looks like?
No.
It causes a differential temperature between what is the surface and, like, another surface, and so the difference between the temperatures of the air causes the piston to rise. And I think if it's something you're lighting, that would create a piston that would then hit something. I think that's what they're talking about.
That makes sense. Poor man brain goes to percolator.
Maybe.
Yeah. This is the first statement, the first time we see, we must walk without rhythm. Paul said, as he called it, the memory of men walking the sand, both prescient memory and real memory. So channeling that same moment with Dr. Kynes where he saw the people wandering the desert, as well as seeing the future and knowing exactly how to walk. What a convenience, you future seeing punk. Lump, 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 lump. Yay! Run! Drum sand. Yeah, so once the drum sand happens, they lose their shit and just start sprinting. Track. Okay. I just want to describe. Where the dunes began, perhaps 50 meters away at the foot of a rock beach, a silver-gray curve broached from the desert, sending rivers of sand and dust cascading all around. It lifted higher, resolved into a giant, questing mouth. It was a round black hole with edges glistening in the moonlight. The mouth snaked toward the narrow crack where Paul and Jessica huddled. Cinnamon yelled in their nostrils. Moonlight flashed from crystal teeth. Back and forth the great mouth wove. Paul stilled his breathing. Jessica crouched, staring. It took intense concentration of her Bene Gesserit training to put down the primal terrors, subduing a race memory fear that threatened to fill her mind. But then there's Paul. Crazy-ass, super future-seeing Paul. Paul felt a kind of elation. In some recent instant, he had crossed a time barrier into more unknown territory. He could sense the darkness ahead, nothing revealed to his inner eye. It was as though some step he had taken had plunged him into a well, or into the trough of a wave where future was invisible. The landscape had undergone a profound shifting. So, danger moments, I guess, are the moments where he can't see his way out, and he actually has to think and act, which is such a cool thing as a reader for me, because that means this character can still be in danger even though he sees the future. Which I like a lot, because a lot of the times, you got your heroes who are fucking untouchable, and I like that he's still touchable. In the descriptions of size, its mouth was some 80 meters in diameter, crystal teeth with the curved shape of crysknives glinting around the rim, the bellows breath of cinnamon, subtle aldehydes, acids, ... And they're like, cinnamon! And more of, what has the worm to do with the spice melange? He asks himself. And remembered Liet Kynes betraying a veiled reference to some association between worm and spice. And what? Does he... Oh, sorry. Yeah, they did reveal Liet Kynes already in that bunker. That's what... Okay. There it is. Just like, why does he know his name? Because they had a whole conversation about it, and I forgot. Anyway, so the worm went away, and somebody called that worm Fremen. Maybe they weren't helping us. Maybe they were just calling a worm. Why? The answer lay poised at the edge of his awareness, but refused to come. He had a vision in his mind of something to do with the telescoping barbed sticks in their packs, the maker hooks. Why would they call a worm? Jessica asked. And then they're just releasing holes on the rocks. So you find something here. They go up over. They climb blind. Yeah.
You were coming in weird. You got all muffly.
Oh no! Am I still
You're
terrible?
fine now. No, you're fine now.
It was when you were looking down.
No, back
That's
back
weird.
up like sentences.
Back up 2 sentences. What was I talking about? I'm a rambler, you see. Oh, sorry. So they're the poles are the other marks of civilization when they reach these rocks. So they at least know they're getting close to the Fremen, and they have to scale this blind because it's pitch black nighttime. The moon's on the other side of this crest, so they're like just feeling their way up this rocky area.
I thought that those poles, he was holding on to in that painting we were doing. That's what I thought these poles were. And I don't know them.
Yeah, mine was very Lynchian inspired. That son of a bitch. I love this weird moment that they have where they look into this bowl and it's all beautiful, the moonlight's splashing, and Paul's like a fairyland. It's such a weird. It's like, this is our big hero, but it's like, yeah, he's still a 15-year-old kid. He's like, yeah, it's like a fairyland. And Jessica's just like, Spreading away in front of her stretched desert growth, bushes, cacti, tiny clumps of leaves, all trembling in the moonlight. The ring walls were dark to her left, moon frosted on her right. And they decide that this obviously is a Fremen place, because all of these plants would need human care to survive in this much concentration. And then there's like this happy moment that turns super sobering, which I also really like when the mice show up. There's little kangaroo mice on the planet of Arrakis. And they're like, it's like, pop, pop, pop. They went into shadows and out. Something fell soundlessly past their eyes into the mice. There came a thin screech, a flapping of wings, and a ghostly gray bird lifted away across the basin with a small dark shadow in its talons. We needed that reminder, Jessica thought. And this is where Still makes his first arrival, I think. I don't think we get... Yeah, so we don't know who Still is yet. Yeah, so tomorrow we can try to find the Fremen who most intruders here regret finding the Fremen. With a heavy masculine voice. And he says, please don't. If you run, you only waste your body's water. And Jessica's first instinct is, oh, they're going to drink us. They're going to drink us like they drank the dead guy in the cabin. They're going to eat us. Basically, she's terrified. And yeah, another voice is calling for Stilgar to get their water and let's be on our way with little enough time before dawn. So at least some of the Fremen agree, and that is actually their plan. And this is still, he felt the edge of fear within him and knew its source. This was blind time, no future he had seen, and they were caught between the wild Fremen whose only interest was the water carried in the flesh of two unshielded bodies. So good. And then we have the death of Kynes in chapter 30. Yeah. Some pretty hymns and stuff. This is where
Tiger, I wanted to know wonder how bad the sun would burn on Arrakis.
A sunburn.
real bad.
Yeah, take Danny out to the beach without sunscreen. That's probably about what it would do.
And that would be in like 5 minutes.
Don't move around during the day, you guys. Gotta travel at night. So yeah, poor Dr. Kynes falling apart in the desert, having a rough fucking time. Just gets dropped off there by the Baron's men to wither and die, and he sure does. But yeah, he's having this sort of mental breakdown. He's dehydrated, so he's having visions. He's having visions of his father and his father's initial plan for this planet, which was to terraform it. And he reveals through this conversation with his father to us that they only need to change 3% of the current ecosystem to make it self-sustaining, which is, I mean, probably still huge in a planetary context, but the idea that it's like, it's so close to being okay. And it's like, again, plans within plans, strategies within strategies. So even the Kynes method of getting people on their side is like, we're going to wrangle religion. We're going to do the thing. So this is where he realizes he's probably going to die. You can smell the pre-spice gases. You know the little makers are beginning to lose some of their water into the mass. The thought of that water beneath him was maddening. He imagined it now, sealed off in strata of porous rock by the leathery half-plant, half-animal little makers, and the thin rupture that was pouring a cool stream of clearest, pure liquid, soothing water into a pre-spice mass! And he gasps. Or he inhales, rather. Yeah. So he knows he's about to bite it, because it's going to go boom.
This is the gas building up underneath.
Yeah, so it's whatever the transformation is to turn mystery maker shit and water into spice is reactive. So basically once this thing explodes, it will release spice. So it's pre-spice now. Chemical reaction is happening. It's going to go boom, create spice that will then be gathered by all these things. But you don't want to be there when it happens because you also go boom. The idea is when this explodes, all that hole's got to fill itself. So he dies by getting sucked down into that void that's created by the explosion. So it's not the explosion that kills him. He's going to get buried and suffocate in sand, which super sucks. Oh, shoot. There's another quote from his dad that I thought was important. Hopefully I highlighted it. La la la. It was lines of movement that gave us the first clue to the relationship between worms and spice, his father said. A worm, Kynes thought with a surge of hope. A maker is sure to come when this bubble bursts, but I have no hooks. How can I mount a big maker without hooks? Aha! So now we know what the hooks are for. I love this. Nature tends to compensate for diseases, to remove or encapsulate them, to incorporate them into the system in her own way. This is after men are being called a disease upon this planet. So basically it's like, Arrakis is going to take care of itself. Arrakis is a one-crop planet, his father said. One crop. It supports a ruling class that lives as ruling classes have lived in all times, while beneath them a semi-human mass of semi-slaves exists on the leavings. It's the masses and the leavings that occupy our attention. These are far more valuable than has ever been suspected. And then Kynes is like, I'm ignoring you, go away, la la la. And this is when he starts to see vultures circling him, planning to eat him. Yeah, this was the paragraph I like. Religion and law among our masses must be one and the same, his father said. An act of disobedience must be a sin and require religious penalties. This will have the dual benefit of bringing both greater obedience and greater bravery. We must depend not so much on the bravery of individuals, you see, as upon the bravery of a whole population. So it's become this huge fucking structure. So it's one of those, like, we don't know how deeply they've influenced the Fremen or how much they've incorporated of what already existed within the Fremen, plus utilizing Bene Gesserit stuff that they implanted there. So it's like it's this whole weaving of various strategies on this planet. Because the Bene Gesserit came and have gone to multiple planets planting the concept of the Kwisatz Haderach. Fremen have their own concept of Eve or the Cataract or whatever, right? They also have their own chosen one theory, and we don't know how much of that is informed by the Bene Gesserit. And we don't know how Liet Kynes has adopted both of those to fuel his plans for terraforming this planet. So it's like they're all working unknowingly together for all of this to kind of come to a head, which is kind of cool. It's nuts. Kynes, keep in mind, though, that we need control only 3% of the energy surface, only 3% to tip the entire structure over into our self-sustaining system. Why aren't you helping me? Kynes wondered. Always the same. When I need you most, you fail me. Rawr. Then the Hawks. This is an interesting line, too. No more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero, his father said. Reading my mind, Kynes thought. Well, let him. The messages already have been sent to my siege villages, he thought. Nothing can stop them. If the Duke's son is alive, they'll find him and protect him as I have commanded. They may discard the woman, his mother, but they'll save the boy. And then he thinks he's saved, and then he realizes he's not. Gigantic bubble of carbon dioxide was forming beneath in the sand, heaving upward in an enormous blow with a dust whirlpool at its center. It would exchange what had been formed deep in the sand for whatever lay on the surface. So just remember the description of the sunburn of Danny's that ruined a hat. Oh, yes. Indeed. And Kynes' weird pride and I am a desert creature, Kynes thought. You see me, father? I am a desert creature. And then Bubble lifts him up. Bubble sucks him down. Then, as his planet killed him, it occurred to Kynes that his father and all the other scientists were wrong, that the most persistent principles of the universe were accident and error. Even the Hawks could appreciate these facts. And then he's gone. Dr. Kynes, the badass, dead. Super dead.
One with the planet.
One with the planet, and the planet with me. Yeah, man. That's those chapters. Let's see. Of new characters. Let's see. There aren't really too many new characters. We've just met Still, who will be further defined. Finally had a conversation with Raban, who's mostly been mentioned and has a great reputation. There's another cool thing. Like, there's not too many, outside of, like, maybe facial features and body type, there's not great detailed descriptions of a lot of these characters, which I think is...
We lost you for a second.
Fuck. Huh. It's frustrating.
Was I warbled when I talked over Danny, or is it just Danny?
Just Danny.
It's just me. I'm frustrated. Yeah. Dune.
So since the new movie is going to be divided into two movies, have we reached the point where we would stop, do you think, for the first movie, or do you think it...
I don't think so. Maybe. I think it depends on how much time they're going to spend on the Harkonnens blasting the shit out of all the Atreides stuff.
Because right now we're about the halfway point on the book, pages-wise and stuff. And time-wise.
Is this monitoring? Are you guys able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm hearing myself twice again.
I was hearing a weird little hiccup.
Yeah, the garble thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. So I feel like probably first film is going to focus the most on the battle and probably the fall of the House of Atreides on Arrakis. I feel like that's going to be the most energetic and dramatic thing, and I think cinematically a big battle makes the most sense, or even if it's a slaughter, I think it'll be interesting to watch. I have a feeling it's going to end maybe right where we are, where the Fremen, no, that's true. We haven't met her character yet. So maybe after that, I guess it has to be after that. So we've got at least a few more chapters before the next phase begins. And I think I have a feeling which scene, and I'll let you know when it happens next week. I think next week we will have hit that point where that's a good place to end, because that's the beginning of phase 2 of Journey, because this is the wrap up of phase 1. for sure. So like their escape and their survival in the desert is definitely like the denouement of all of that opening shit. And now it's going to start. Basically, it's like they got struck down, and now they're going to try to amass and strike back. And I think that's kind of where we're going to be. I'm breaking up again, apparently.
Not right now. That was
not right now.
Not right.
From
That was before.
Yeah.
Man. Come on, VMAX. Get your shit together. I don't know. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? How about you, Tagron?
back to work. She's
All right. See you, baby.
No, these are pretty straightforward. Chapters, nothing super crazy happened. Just a bunch of information for us to understand.
Mm-hmm.
There's weird like moments in the book still where they like put a emphasis with music in the audiobook that I'm still don't know what it means, if they're supposed to be important. Like it's like music will come in and you'll hear like wind and they'll pause for a little bit and then they go on, and I don't know
like
what
within the same scene or like a scene break.
Yeah, in the middle of within the same scene. I have to find some for you and play them for you and go. I don't know why they're emphasizing certain areas. There's certain areas that make sense where they would, but they're putting them in weird places, right? I don't understand why they're emphasizing, and I don't know if I'm missing something.
Who knows? I don't know. Well, hooray! Happy Dune time, everybody. So next week, we're gonna read chapters 31 through 35. We're getting
And
there.
I'll post the chapters in the Discord in a couple of minutes.
Yay! Thank you, Art.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So who we gonna raid?
Let's see. We've got Grandidius is online.
Sweet. Let's throw him
Sweet.
some love. All right, everybody, go say hi to Grandidius, nicest guy on Twitch. Yeah.
All right.
He's so cool. He's so nice.
See you later, everyone.
Y'all. Bye.